I'm going to an island where people sacrifice pigs near the skulls of their ancestors, worship sharks and stingrays, and are expert canoe builders. This is a mystical place where curses are very real. Family disputes are settled using shells as currency, and the indigenous people here have been making islands out of dead coral to build their house on for thousands of years. I'm heading to Langalanga Lagoon, part of the island of Malaita in the Solomon Islands, a remote country in the South Pacific. Come with me as I learn indigenous ways, the gift of boat building and canoe digging, how to make shell money, and try all of the delicious foods that come from this island. Come with me to learn the Melanesian way of life. Let's go to Langalanga. It's 5:30 a.m. in the capital city of the Solomon Islands, Honiara. Everyone awaits to board the ferry that leaves at 7:30. For us, it's impossible to know what he's saying, but we shuffle forward shoulder to shoulder with everyone around us. This is the Ayuki Express. With our heavy backpacks on our backs, we stand here and hope for the line to move as soon as possible. And as the sun comes up, the line moves too. Getting here early was a good idea because it is packed and we wanted a seat towards the front. We made it on the Ayuki Express. The ferry is 250 Solomon Island dollars per person or 30 US dollars for a 2.5-hour ride. I got settled in and immediately passed out. And just like that, I woke up on the island of Malaita. Solomon Islands itself only receives around 26,000 tourists annually, with Malaita only receiving 4% of those tourists. So it's obvious our presence here is a little bit surprising. Despite this, we're welcomed by Hilda, a strong Malaitan woman and an incredible organizer and supporter of her local community. Hilda owns a guest house nearby with her husband Edwin. She's offered to help us organize our trip, and some of that will contribute to the other local community members. We'll get to that in a moment. For now, Clyde is here with the boat to take us deep into Langalanga Lagoon. Now, while the local language of the Solomon Islands is called Pidgin, in Langalanga, things are a little bit different. Good morning is Rafle Oka, and thank you is Dagiora Sua. Life is Maurina, and as saltwater people, they believe the ocean is their life. They worship stingray and sharks, which means they don't eat either of them. And the same goes for octopus, which is interesting to me because I also don't eat sharks, stingrays, or octopus because of their intelligence. I mentioned this before, but all of the Malaitan houses in the Langalanga Lagoon are built on artificial islands made from dead coral. All around Langalanga Lagoon are incredible mangroves with their roots in extremely rich soil, loaded with oxygen and nutrients. Now we're pulling up to the guest house. And you can see Edwin, Hilda's husband, waving in the distance. This is a really great view of the islands that are made using dead coral, a practice that has been going on for thousands of years. And look at this beautiful crystal clear water. We're welcomed with a beautiful fresh coconut. It is incredibly sweet. A specific woman comes by every day on her little canoe to sell these extra sweet coconuts. Now let's take a little tour of our bungalow. The cost is 380 Solomon dollars per night, which is about 31 US dollars. Our bungalow has 2 rooms, so here you can see one large bed. And as we venture into the other room, there's one large bed and one smaller bed. So you can take your pick. There's also a mosquito net, and then you are just surrounded by beautiful water all around you. Hilda and Edwin started building this guest house about 4 years ago, but 2 years ago they moved here full-time and fully started running it. Now it's the best part of the day, lunchtime. I grab my plate made from banana palm leaf and it's time to dive in.
And that's our local spinach, is watermelons and kumara.
Of course we have fish, and that brown thing that looks like frijoles is actually mangrove beans. These fall off the tree naturally and people collect them and then boil them down. On the main island, the bush people plant so many crops, like this real taro. It is so sweet naturally. In Malaita culture, all land conflicts are only because of Western ideals. If you are from this land, then you have land rights. That means everyone owns the land. So for example, Edwin's cousin asked if he could have this land next door so that he could build a house and live across from the school where he works. And so he's able to do that because not just one person owns the land. In this culture, land is also given for killing someone as a bounty. Or if there's only one girl in a family of all boy siblings, she can be given land from the boys. Now it's time to go explore more of Langalanga Lagoon, because there are some incredibly interesting practices that take place, and also what appear to be a few curses that have happened. with actual proof. The Malaita people of Langalanga Lagoon are extremely superstitious. There is a saying that says once a boat goes up back onto the land next to your house, that it will not go down back into the water again. Now here is a boat built by a man that had torina, which is the gift of boat building. This boat was completely made by hand.
So the person that originally started building this boat, he passed away, so they stopped working on it. But what's crazy is that they think that if they wanted to actually eventually complete the boat, it would be almost 600,000 US dollars, which is about 5 million Solomon dollars. But it's huge. You can see how big the boat is.
And that's not even paying for labor, because most of the time people donate their labor. Sadly, the owner passed away, and the family is keeping this here as a shrine to him. But you can see how much work has gone into this. All of the fires underneath the boat to bend the wood into the proper shape. The 30 men who have worked on this boat to build it, who had to be fed by the original creator. It's time to venture further.
We're back in the boat, and we are going to go see the cursed boat.
We were told a story about a cursed boat. One father of a family created this boat. He suddenly passed away as it was almost finished. Then the son began to work on the boat. He too quickly passed away. Another brother began to try and use the boat. He passed as well. Finally, a sister tried, and what do you think happened? Now there is only the mother and one last sibling that is left, and neither of them dare to touch the boat. Now these images are not of the boat, but of a different boat that, when it went up, it never came back down. And it's now been up there for many years. But you can see how beautifully they are constructed. Whether it is black magic or they did something to anger the ancestors, no one will know. To get to the cursed boat, we need to go to this gas station. Gas is around $8 per gallon. Although we are in a motorized boat, many people here use various forms of dugout canoes for various reasons. The Malaita people believe that torina, the magic of canoe making, is given to specific clans by the ancestors. And there are different canoes for different reasons. There's a family canoe for gardening and shell collecting, a male canoe for men's business, to invoke spirits at the skull house and visit tribal leaders. Don't worry, I promise I'll explain this soon. There's a small canoe called a lola, fishing canoes, dugout canoes, plank canoes with vines and glue made from the fruit of a tree. Those for long distance traveling and for very, very long distance traveling. Okay, but now,
This boat that we're approaching has a curse. Every single family member that worked on this boat and tried to get on the water passed away. And so they've just completely abandoned this extremely expensive ship.
now I know that I already told this story, but I think that it is so crazy. Do you think it's a curse? Because I definitely do. Look at how big this boat is in the water, just sitting there not being used by anyone. Now moving on, I know you've heard about cannibals in the South Pacific, and cannibalism is a reality here. But there are two aspects of this. First, I want to talk about Skull Island. Essentially a holy place here where women are not allowed to venture. On Skull Island, there is a shrine where the skulls of the deceased priests are placed. Since women are not allowed into this area, Edwin was very kind to go take the canoe and take these photos for us. They also do duru. This is keeping the spirit of the ancestors in houses. You take an item and put it on the dead person for 3 days. They'll take this item and put it in their house after for blessing and protection and to hold a piece of that person forever. Remember how I told you that shells are used as currency on Malaita? Well, let me explain a bit, because it's not just shells that you find and then give whole. There is an intense and difficult process in order to make shell money. In fact, Malaitan women actually make shell money every single day of their lives. Yes, after they have to tend to the children and the food and the family. Every single day they make shell money. Thousands of years ago, there is a myth that is told that the first person to introduce shell money to the Langalanga Lagoon was a woman from Bougainville, which is Papua New Guinea. She was banished and floated in a coconut shell through and around the Solomon Islands and finally to Malaita. She taught the Malaitans how to make shell money. Now it helps to settle conflicts, tribal issues, dowries. And there are about 8 steps in the process of actually making the shell money. Step 1, which often children help with this, is to just break the shells. These are shells that are collected from all around, with the white shells being the easiest to find and the cheapest value. Orange and black are the next level of expensive, and then red is the most expensive, representing the eagle. The next step in the process is called didina, and that's to shape the small shells that were already broken into little discs. these need to be the perfect size. As Hilda explains to us and translates the entire process, you can see that everybody is working very hard behind. You can also see that everybody is wearing grass skirts and grass clothing. This is the traditional style of clothing for Malaitan people and even people in the bush on other parts of the Solomon Islands. Here you can see the shells in their original form. So those are the black shells. And then these other shells here are white, but you can see that red part of it, which is the most expensive type of shell. The orange shells actually start off brown and then they have to be changed to a different color. But I will show you how they do that shortly. Now keep this in mind, but the values of the shells in these little tiny discs are 30 white shells for 1 Solomon Islands dollar. For the orange and black, it's 30 for 2 Solomon Island dollars. And for the red, it's 30 for 5 Solomon Island dollars. 1 unit equals 10, 7, 8, or 10-foot strands of these shells. Let's get into the next step of the process and we'll come back to the price in a bit. The next step in the process is called safa, and this is the act of polishing. They use a piece of rock that is pounded into a paste, and they place all of the tiny shells into this other rock that has little slits for them to go into. This is one of the hardest parts of actually doing the shell money, and the mother is usually the one who does it or who monitors it. She offered if I wanted to try it out, so of course I had to. Funny enough, I'm starting off doing this completely wrong, and it is the wrong motion with my hands. It should be in a circular motion, and it is actually super hard to keep the shells in the little slots on that small rock in my hands. This is the moment where someone finally told me, and now I am fixing the way that I'm doing the polishing, and I think it looks a lot better. Dilara also wanted to try doing it, and it was hard for her because she didn't like the sound of the stones rubbing on the shell, and I totally understand this. Obviously, I'm in major concentration here, but if you can see what she's doing next to me, she is actually doing the next step of the process. And this is to put a hole in the shell. Essentially, it is a spindle and it has a pointy rock at the bottom of it, so that is what they use to spin and make a hole in each shell. I'm going to be totally real with you right now, and they actually do not use this anymore because now they do have little handheld drills they actually get from China, but this is how it used to work, and they still do the hole in the shell money, so it's still a step in the process. Okay, I know I said that before, the polishing is the most difficult part, but actually this is the most important step in the process and the most difficult, and that is taking the brown shells and heating them up on a hot stone to turn them orange. It is essential that the mother does this step because they can get ruined if they are on there for too long. One of the easier parts of processing these shell money is this part, the grinding down and just the shaping and the sanding of the outside. This is usually given to the youngest child, as you can see here, and I also tried it, and I did find it a lot easier than the other parts of the process. Although I'm not going to discount that it definitely takes a bit of arm strength. Now it's time to put it into the design, but I also want to talk about value. Each strand of shell money is either 7 feet, 8 feet, or 10 feet. 10 of these strands equals 1 unit. One 7-foot unit is 1,000 Solomon dollars, and one 8-foot unit is equal to 1,500 Solomon dollars. So a 7-foot is 120 US dollars, and an 8-foot is 180 US dollars. 10 strands equals 1 unit, and a dowry can ask for 50 units. So on the low end, that's worth about 6,000 US dollars, and on the higher end, it's about 9,000 US dollars. There is a very specific design, and it all means something. The black and white shells together mean protection in the water, and the brown, when it turns orange, represents the octopus. I hope you enjoyed learning about shell money, and now this is actually when Edwin decided to go with Hilda's son, and so nicely went to take photos of Skull Island for us. In the meantime, I am having
Another coconut. We're obsessed.
and just looking how beautiful they built these bungalows. Right now they're soaking some bamboo in the salt water. It's just a whole underwater world right here. It is almost like an aquarium. Before we knew it, Edwin and Hilda's son are back. This is one of the traditional style canoes. I spotted this gecko on the dinner table, and now it is time for us to eat once again. We're having some amazing root vegetables, this very interesting grain, and then we're also having some eggplant. Dinner was really lovely, but now it's time to take a bucket shower and head off to bed. Now we're actually leaving today, and I know this was a quick trip to Malaita, but I had such an amazing time, and I highly recommend anyone looking for a different experience in the Solomon Islands to come to Malaita and stay at Hilda and Edwin's. Before leaving, we took a group picture. This is us, Hilda, Edwin, and 2 elders from the community. Now, although not many visitors come to this part of the world, it is actually extremely accessible if you know the right people. And now you do. I highly recommend anyone visit the Solomon Islands. It is extremely safe, and you will learn so much about a culture that maybe you never even heard about before. Now it's time to head out and get back on the ferry back to the mainland. Oh, and did you know that the Solomon Islands are one of the main reasons why the US was able to have success in the Pacific during World War II? Yep, but that's a story for another day. Thanks for traveling with me today. I'll be going to every single country in the South Pacific aside from Papua New Guinea on this trip, so don't forget to like and subscribe. I can't wait to share this journey with you.